Hello, love. My name is Gina Lee, and welcome to the second episode of the Go Gina podcast. I have bipolar disorder, if you couldn't tell by the title, and it's something that's very prevalent in my life and something that I have had to deal with for a very, very long time. So I wanted to share my experience with you all, and if some of you guys have bipolar disorder and resonate with it, then I think that is great if you resonate with some of the things I'm talking about here. I'm sorry that I seem pretty low energy today. It's because I am, and I feel like absolute dog shit. I'm actually on my period right now, and I feel like really terrible, like really disgusting and terrible, and my stomach hurts, and I was so sick all of last night. But I have been trying to film a podcast episode at least once a week and get it out there for you guys. So we're just going to go over some mental health stuff, and I'll share the things that have helped me live with bipolar disorder, and I hope they help you as well. Let's get started. Let's start by diving into what bipolar disorder is. So, bipolar disorder is a mental health condition that causes extreme mood shifts or mood swings, whatever you want to kind of describe it as. For me, it's entire mood shifts rather than just like an abrupt swing. I have bipolar disorder type 2, which means I go through kind of like cycles where I am really on top of the world and super elated and excited about life, and I see all the possibilities and wonderful portions of my life and all the chances I can take and everything good in the world. And that is typically referred to as the manic period. And then the more depressive side of it is what I'm kind of in right now, which is the very low period where you feel like nothing matters, that you are, well, I basically just feel like an absolute piece of shit whenever I'm in my low period. But for bipolar disorder type 2, it does kind of cycle somewhat like that. Bipolar disorder is very extreme. So the average person has mood shifts, and they might be happier one day and sad on another day, but it's not to the extreme case that people with bipolar disorder deal with. I would say around 15, I started noticing that I was a little bit different. I was in public high school. I was going to track practice a lot because I was in track and cross country, and there would be high times or high periods, I guess the more manic kind of side of things, where I would go to practice and just be fucking thrilled to be there, thrilled to run 6 miles. And even after the 6 miles, I would have so much more energy, and I wanted to just keep going and going and going and pushing myself. And I absolutely loved it. I would spend like 5 hours a day exercising, and it was amazing. And listening to music when I was running and I was 15 and in like a more manic state, oh my God, it just felt like that shit was coursing through my veins. It felt like I was just like one with the music that was going through my head and what I was listening to, and it was so beautiful, and I could just feel everything so fucking deeply, and it was amazing. And then say a couple weeks later, a little bit of time goes by, and now that same music sounds dull. I couldn't stand to listen to the same songs. I was like, this is just an earful of bullshit. I can't stand to hear it. It sounds so deadened and almost like it was, or almost like I was underwater when I was listening to it. And I was like, I don't understand how this 2 weeks ago sounded fucking amazing. And I was so thrilled to be alive. And now just going to track practice felt horrible. And even the way I was exercising would go down quite a bit. So I would only be able to do like just the bare minimum rather than the full kind of 5-hour bullshit that I was doing to train and be the best athlete that I could be. I had no idea why I was actually doing what I was doing in these time periods. I think it's important to mention that I grew up relatively low income. Oh my God, this is really diving into the mental health shit for me. I wasn't going to be able to get into a good college and make something out of myself, at least so I thought, unless I got a really, really good scholarship to a big school. I put all of my effort and energy into academics and also athletics. So I was really, really into cross country and track and all those things I was kind of discussing a second ago. And I pushed myself really hard with my academics because I really, really wanted that scholarship and to build a beautiful life for myself. In those manic periods, I could see my future. It was like it was laid out on this beautiful platter for me, and I could see myself winning these championships and doing fucking amazing and just being this beautiful, strong, driven person that I believed I was in those time periods. And then whenever I would dip back down and start to feel shitty about myself, the only thing I could see is how I was a fucking failure and not good enough. I was like, I'm never ever going to be good enough for this. I truthfully have no idea how I'm going to get out of the circumstance I'm in, and what I'm doing isn't going to work. It's not going to work. And I would be so tempted just to throw in the fucking towel and give up every time I was in these low periods. I was terrified of failure. So I would still do everything, but it was just so fucking redundant and painful. Painful. Everything felt pointless, from brushing my hair and my teeth to going to exercise, even though it did make me feel better. I just couldn't see a reason for anything I was doing, and I struggled a lot with suicidal thoughts, so that was terrible. It was a really, really dark time period for me because I had no idea what was going on in my brain, and I didn't understand how everything would come crashing down at my feet, basically on a fucking routine, which is really tiring. So yeah, 15, into athletics, really into sports, whatever, and I was so excited about my future, but I still did go through the bipolar cycle at this time. So I kind of started to notice the mood shifts and everything and how abrupt and aggressive they were. Then I started to fall into a really bad headspace. And those dark time periods really started to fuck with me a lot more and were what I was paying attention to more than the higher periods of more elevated mood. I also want to mention that I do struggle with OCD as well. My psych chart, bitch, looks like a Christmas tree. It's lit the fuck up everywhere. I also struggle with OCD, but which I think is important to mention for what I'm about to talk about. When I was focusing more on the down periods, I started dealing with suicidal thoughts, like I said, but I also started to self-harm. Ooh, that's what I'm worried about YouTube taking this down for, is because of all the dark shit I'm going to discuss. I would self-harm some when I was really depressed, but a lot of it would come up when I was having bad OCD triggers. I would deal with horrible fear of the sound of airplanes going overhead. I think Post Malone actually talked about this in an interview, which I thought was fucking crazy. And I was like, oh my God, somebody else has this? Because I talked to a therapist about it one time, and she was like, oh, I've never heard of that before. That's interesting. And who wants to hear that from a therapist when they're 16? Nobody. That shit sucks. Makes you feel more alone than you were before, but whatever. The self-harm would be triggered a lot by my OCD though. So if I would hear an airplane go overhead, this is fucking crazy. I used to keep my little self-harm tool at close proximity so that if I heard an airplane going overhead, I would use it to calm me down, and I would self-harm until it was away, until it was gone. And just the act of self-harming did relieve some of the anxiety that I was going through, which is terrible. Do not self-harm. It is literally just a band-aid. That's a really bad joke. That's a really bad joke. It's really just a band-aid for whatever the fuck you're going through, and it doesn't help you in any way, shape, or form. I went to my guidance counselor at the time, and I'm sorry, Queen, if you're watching this, you did not help me at all, and I really could have used some, uplifting words or something, and whatever, but you didn't help me at all. You just sent an email to my parents, which I kind of didn't want you to do, but it's fine. They sent an email to my parents about counselors around the area, whatever, and it was kind of fucked. I was like, okay, maybe I'm gonna get help and I can keep pursuing my goal of being a track star, whatever, a great athlete and great in academics, and I'll get somewhere with my life, right? Well, I asked my parents after a while because they never said anything to me about it, other than mentioning oh, we see that you're going through it. Why didn't you talk to us about this? And I was like, oh, well, because when I try to talk about it, it doesn't go so well. I want to disclose that my parents are much, much, much better about talking about mental health now and are really kind to me. And I'm so eternally fucking grateful for you guys. If you're watching this, I love you so much. I could like actually cry. Okay. But at the time, it was really hard because they weren't as familiar with mental health and what that really meant. So I was really struggling and I didn't get the help that I needed. I also do think it's important to mention again that my parents didn't have a lot of money, so getting a therapist that was good and would actually have probably helped me was really, really difficult at the time. So I ended up not getting any help for what I was going through, which I thought was just generalized anxiety and depression. And I just started to go off the fucking rails, if I'm going to be honest with you guys. So then summer break starts and I'm 15. And at this point I was like, what could I do instead of trying to better myself, because I don't know what the fuck's going on in my brain and I don't know how to deal with it. So I'm just gonna, I'm gonna go completely off the fucking rails. I started hanging out with different groups of people and it was a shit show, to say the fucking least. Oh my God. This is when my life just like shattered at my fucking feet. I was like, whoa, 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 whoa. This shit's not cool anymore. It's not cool. It's not chill. It's not funky or fresh or funny at all. I, started hanging out with different groups of people. I also started to dabble in some things I should not be dabbling in. I'm not going to tell you what the things I'm referring to are, but they rhyme with hugs. Yeah, they rhyme with hugs, but I'm not going to fucking say it because you're not going to get me caught up actually saying it. The fuck? Yeah, I was using them a little bit as a crutch here and there to lift myself back up out of the hole that I was in where I was really fucking depressed and upset. I was also hanging out with a boy who, if you see this, I hope that you get the help that you need. I really do, because you are deeply struggling as well, and I hope that you get the help that you need and you seek the counseling that you need as well. Yeah, he fucked me up a little bit. Or he was quite a bit older than me, and I fell into the trap of, I'm 15. I'm gonna hang out with an 18-year-old. And I know some of you guys are like, that's not that much older. My husband's 10 years older than me. It's different when you're 15. Okay, it's different. You're a lot more naive than, say, if you were to be 25 meeting someone who's 35. That's a whole different ball game there. I started hanging around him, and doing some things I shouldn't be doing. He really dove into manipulating me because I was really naive and really, really young and just down to figure out what all of this, what's the word? All this fun stuff is all about. I was really excited to figure out what the fuck it was all about. And he totally took advantage of that and manipulated me and said really horrible things to me and just did a lot of really, really bad shit at the time. Yeah, I was, getting quite a bit of hugs in my life and also drinking quite a bit at the time. I eventually snapped my ankle, which was really bad because, like I said before, I was really into track. And even while all this shit was still going on, I was still practicing and getting ready for the next cross country season. Even with all the bullshit going on, I was like, okay, I gotta be ready for next season. So even with the hugs and the drinking, I was still like, I'm gonna be a fucking track star next year and I'm gonna get that scholarship next year because I was gonna be a junior. And I think that's how that whole thing worked. I don't remember, but I was excited about it. Fucked up my ankle really bad. It basically wasn't going to heal until the start of the next school / cross country season. And I was like, oh my God, this is so fucking bad. So what did I do? Had some more hugs and some more drinking and just I had to lay off my ankle quite a bit. So I did do that, and stayed messing around with this boy who was terrible to me and just terrible to any girl he's ever been with ever. For all the girls that have been with him, I'm really, really sorry. He's a deeply conflicted human being and he needs fucking professional help more than a lot of people who actively get it. So I messed up my ankle and I was like, okay, well, I will be ready by the beginning of the season. But that really threw me into a darker hole because I knew that I wasn't going to be where everybody else was at whenever I got back to working out. And I knew that. I was like, I've kind of already fucked myself over for this season. So I'm going to have to work twice as hard to get back into good shape whenever we start back. Fast forward, this boy drops me because I was doing hugs and drinking at the time, and he was like, that's terrible, whatever, all that stuff, whatever, which is really ironic, actually. And I was really devastated by it because he was the one of the only guys who'd ever like showed me attention at the time, and I wasn't used to getting that kind of attention because I was a little bit of a rat when I was 15. I was not cute at all. I mean, how many of us really were, though? Some of you guys were beautiful people. I was not. I was a little rat, a little rodent. But it kind of broke my heart a little bit, and I was really fucked up over it. And I was like, well, this shit sucks. And I was also in like a toxic little friend group at the time, too, which didn't make anything any better. And my home life wasn't great. I then started back the school year. So that was all of the summer, just lots of really stupid and reckless shit that I was doing, and lots of ups and down periods, and just hating everything. The next school year started. So this is in late August, early September. So I go back and I was like, okay, I'm going to have to get back in good shape for this cross country thing. But my mindset had kind of changed a little bit during that summer period of time. And I was like, I just don't resonate with these other kids on the cross country team and all this other stuff. I just felt like different from them than I used to. I really felt close to them before, and that went away quite a bit. I felt really far away from them, and that somehow they knew that I had fucked up a lot over the course of the summer, even though they didn't at all. I think we had the first day of practice, and the first day of actual practice went terrible. I was so out of shape, and I had gained probably 10 pounds at the time because I was just drinking and having hugs and laying on my ass all the time and just feeling like shit over the summer. So I did gain some weight and lost quite a bit of speed as a result. I go to practice the next day. We start running, we start warming up, and I'm feeling like shit. I feel like shit. My spandex didn't fit me right anymore because I'd gained weight, and I knew that I was a lot slower than some of the people I had been quite ahead of at the end of last season, and I was just like, wow, I feel like such a loser. Whatever. We're running along this kind of trail that we had at my old high school, and I wish I could sue that place if I had the money for this because it was literally their fucking fault. But there were these massive, like, holes on the trail. I don't know how they came about, but they were really deep. They were like this deep, and you couldn't see them because there was like leaves and stuff on the ground. So you would just step in one and then just be like, oh my fucking God, and then basically break your shit, right? I was running, and this girl that I was friends with from the season or a couple seasons before, we had been friends the whole time. We were kind of all running together, and she got her foot kind of stuck in one of those and she fell. And I was like, oh my God. So I pivot and I turn around, and then my foot caught one really bad. Like hers kind of caught it and she was like able to get back up a little bit. But while this was happening and she was like on the ground, I turned around to make sure she was okay and to go help her get up. My foot catches, but my shit snaps. Like I heard a pop and I was like, oh my God, what the fuck? And I like just laid there. And I think the thing that fucks me up the most about this is I could never be friends with her again, even if she didn't know the significance of the event to me, because I was like, oh my God, are you okay? And I was going to check on her, and then I fucked up my leg or my ankle, and she just got up and kept running and didn't even pay attention to the fact that I like literally sprained the fuck out of my ankle trying to make sure that she was okay. And that will probably fuck me up to the day I die, okay? Oh, that shit makes me so mad. Just be careful if you're helping other people. I'm not saying don't help other people. You should. You absolutely should. Just don't fuck yourself over in the process is my moral of the story there. One of the girls I was friends with and another girl I was friends with, they helped me, and they literally like put me kind of like my arms up on their shoulders and walked me over to the trainer. Oh my God. Those girls are the sweetest girls ever. They like stopped what they were doing in the practicing entirely to come like help me. And I absolutely adore those girls. And they're still such sweet, beautiful women till this day. And it's fucking amazing. And I'm so proud of you guys. I'm sorry, guys. I'm on my period and not doing great. So I'm really emotional. But I was walking over to the trainer or whatever, he looks at it and he's like, oh yeah. He's like, this is sprained really bad. And it was the same ankle that I sprained during the summer. Oh my God. And it was even more fucked. And they told me, they're like, yeah, you're completely out of the season. And I was like, I'm completely out of the season. I also think it's important to mention that running and cross country were the only things that made me happy and also just out of my own head, because it was a really dark, shitty place in there. It was not fun to be inside my head whatsoever. And exercising and making something out of myself and going for the scholarship was the only thing that brought me fucking joy, like an ounce of it at the time. So yeah, I realized, I was like, okay, well, I think I'm fucked. I was like, I think I'm fucked. I'm absolutely fucked. So what did I do that same night? I was like, okay, cool. Very reckless, keep in mind. I went home and I had a little supply of some hugs that I hadn't touched in a long time. And I had some hugs that night, and I had a lot actually. And I woke up the next morning and I was still like, I was like, oh my God. Very woozy the next morning. And I was obviously pain free as a result of said hugs. And I went to school the next day. And my friends who at the time were like, yo, are you fucked up? And I was like, maybe. That helped me with my physical pain from my ankle being so fucked up. And it also helped me tremendously with the mental pain that I was going through, because I didn't have to think about it. I didn't have to think about anything. I could just think about how warm and fucking fuzzy I was and the fact that I was on a cloud. Yeah, and that kind of fucked me up. I knew at that point, I was like, oh, well, this might be bad. I almost invited it. I was like, I'm losing my identity entirely. I felt like I lost who I was that day where my ankle was fucked up and I was kicked out of the season, basically, because it was not going to heal for a long time. I was just going to let the fuck go. I knew at that moment that I was going to let go. And I hate that, because I really could have just like went through it and whatever, but everything happens for a reason, I guess. Pretty shortly after that, like literally within a couple days after getting my ankle fucking destroyed, I got really sick and I went to the doctor and they were just like, okay, they had me take some just over the counter cough syrup or cough medicine because I was so like sick and congested and like coughing so much I couldn't sleep at all. And they had me take that. And I took it. And when I woke up the next morning, similar situation. I was still I was still woozy as fuck. And I was just like, huh. And I went to work. Girl, you 16. I did have a job though. Like I said, I felt really woozy and I was like, whoa, when I went to school, and all my friends were saying stuff to me and they're like, are you messed up right now? And I was like, I mean, I just had a little extra of the cough syrup from the night before. I didn't mean to, but I just like poured like the tiniest bit too much, and I was really skinny at the time too, so it was very easy to get messed up by just taking a little bit too much of something, if you know what I mean. And I fucking spiraled after that, because again, with the cough medicine, it just allowed me not to think, and it put me in this really weird headspace where I was like, I just was not there. I wasn't there. I didn't have to be there. The cough medicine or any of the other hugs that I was taking at this time allowed me to not actually be there. I was able to be a body and to walk around and to take my vessel places, but I didn't have to use it. I didn't have to think about anything or think about how much pain I was in, both physically and mentally. And it was just the biggest kind of escape for me at the time. And yeah, spiraled is a very good word for that, because then I was taking over the counter cough medicine all the time, and I would use my money from work to go buy more cough medicine. Thankfully, I never had to steal it, but I told myself, I was like, for some reason, if they ever start carding me, because I started having to do that near my high school because kids were doing that same shit. I was like, if they ever start carding me, I was like, I'm taking this shit. I will take this shit and I will walk out. That's how fucking bad off I was. Just got worse and worse until I was just taking different substances, pretty much anything I could get my hands on that was readily available and in my close circle. I didn't do anything too crazy because I was 16 and I was just taking stuff basically from people's cabinets. I got to a point where I was taking medications and substances so much that I just fully identified with the addict kind of persona, I guess, and I decided that I was a complete failure and a complete fuck up and that I was never going to be able to do anything with my life and that I had lost everything that I knew to be a part of myself, and I just decided that I was so miserable that nobody cared about me. And also when you're on substances or taking stuff for a long time, it kind of changes the way your brain works, your brain chemistry, unfortunately. You can't think straight. So you're not thinking clearly about how you're viewing the world or your reality. And if you're on things like downers, which is what I took, you are one with that and you are very, very, very depressed and just see how terrible things are if you take them for a long time. I remember being in fourth period, and this day I had woke up that morning and oh god, I was late for school because I had slept so much because I was up all of the night before because I was on some hugs and I overslept, and there was this thing I wanted to go to and I was now grounded as a result because I had been oversleeping and I was going to make my dad late to work, and which was fair. Parents, love you guys. That was not really wrong of you for grounding me. But I decided, and I was thinking about it a couple days prior to this, but this was kind of the cherry on top. Because I kind of knew I wasn't going to be able to get out and get more like substances and stuff too. So I was like, I'm gonna cut the switch. I'm gonna cut the switch to my life. I'm gonna cut it off, and I'm gonna leave the world. I was like, I'm not gonna be here anymore. I can't do this. I can't do this. I hated myself so much. I was so fucking miserable in my own body. I hated absolutely everything about myself, and I just hated my life, the entirety of it, everything. Not the people, not the people. I didn't hate the people, but I hated myself and who I was around people, and also the way things had unfolded and the fact that I lost my identity and the person that I was entirely, and I just couldn't fucking do it. And I was like, okay, you know what? This is a good day to end my days. So I tried to take some extra fun substances this day. I took a lot of it. I took a ton of shit. And I was trying to OD. And I'm not going to share too many details about this because I literally don't want to. So, yeah, I tried to OD. I might share one thing because it's kind of fucking funny. I tried to OD, which is that part's not funny. I tried to OD, and I also tried to jump out of a tree when I was really fucked up. I tried to jump out of a tree, but I couldn't climb very high because I was fucked up. So I would like get up it, and then I would fall. I would get up it, and then I'd fucking fall. Oh wow, that's really funny. That's actually not the really funny part though. They put on my I fucking hate doctors sometimes. They put on my intake thing or my description that I was going to play outside and I fell out of a tree. Going to play outside in the woods and I fell out of a tree. Play outside. Well, that would have been my last motherfucking playtime ever, and they didn't even care to include that. They just said that I fell out of the tree. I was like, wow, thanks. Now I just seem stupid and clumsy and not suicidal, which is kind of funny looking back on it now. I think it's fucking hilarious that they put that, assholes. We're gonna kind of speed run through some things. Since you kind of know the background story, everything else after this, up until when I was diagnosed, is a little bit of a blur. So I'm gonna try to talk about these things less in depth and pretty quickly because you might be getting bored about my kill myself story. Where were we? Okay, we had just been admitted to the mental hospital. Yeah, gang gang. I got admitted and it sucked. They were such assholes. I'm sorry guys. You guys suck. Some of you weren't. Some of you guys were great, but a lot of you guys sucked and they were literally no help at all. Okay, they tried to put me on a medication, but my mom was really against medication at the time. And yeah, my mom wouldn't let them put me on one, but she literally could not legally take me back home without getting me a therapist. They would not let me leave. They would not let me leave. I was there for a long time too, because I was such a little evil demon. Like, you still want to commit? I was like, absolutely. I'll do it the second I leave here. I was like, if I could get out this glass right now, I'd be gone so fucking fast. Boop. Drop on the concrete, baby girl. That's a terrible joke. I'm sorry, guys. I'm sorry about the change in lighting and also partially scenery about where I was at. My phone died and I had to charge it, and my phone takes literally fucking years to charge. So now it's dark outside. They had let me go out of the mental hospital after keeping me there for, I believe, 9 days. And like I said, I was a total asshole to the workers to a certain degree, but also it was stupid. They had this like card system that you have in kindergarten, like a color card system, almost kind of a weird situation like that where you weren't allowed to leave until you were to reach a certain color, which I think is fucking insane to do to people who have tried to commit, you know? I think it's crazy to make them go off of a reward system, and I'm not even gonna lie, the fact that I kept getting my card or color knocked back made me feel even shittier about myself in the situation I was in. Got out of there, and then it was on to therapy because like I said before, they wouldn't let me leave unless my mom got me a therapist, right? So I leave. I was not in a better mental state whatsoever, probably just about the same, maybe even worse. The only difference was I was still, after 9 days, kind of like withdrawing from hugs, and just feeling really, really shitty. I started going to therapy, and I was going to this Christian therapist who was honestly terrible. She was not helpful whatsoever. She was really weird in the way that she spoke to me, and I assume her other clients, she was probably this way as well. I remember talking to her about my experiences and the stuff that I had gone through and what I was currently going through. And one of the things she said was that I was really driven and that she was so happy that I wasn't like the other losers, I guess, that she was seeing. She literally used the word loser, y'all. Loser. And the reason she used that word is because I was talking about how I was good at school and that my academics were still really good, and that I still did put some effort into that. She's like, yeah, I'm glad you're not like these other losers. And I was like, you're a fucking therapist, bitch. Do you have the right to say that at all? Like, I don't think that's okay to say to someone in general, especially because a lot of the people you're seeing are people who are struggling to an insane capacity. That didn't go very well. And again, everyone is still under the impression that I'm just dealing with generalized anxiety and depression, which was not helpful at all because I would try to explain to people and be like, I'm not suicidal and really, really fucking sad all the time. At this point, that was the majority of the time because of how bad my mental health was. But I also tried to explain to them that there's times when I feel like everything's okay and that everything's going to be okay. And I'm even maybe in a great mood and excited about things. And they just tried to tell me that, oh, that's how regular depression works. It's worse sometimes than others. And I was like, oh my god, I tried so hard, but they just did not fucking get it. They did not fucking get it. And again, I'm 16 at this time. I didn't get diagnosed till I was 19. So this is a really fun process and I oh my god. I ended up seeing that therapist a little bit longer and then eventually after the loser comment, me and my mom were like that was kind of fucked up. I don't think that I want you to see her anymore. And I was like, thank God, 'cause she was not helping me. And she also had this really weird kind of like thing about religion, which I know this is going to sound weird, especially people who have known me my whole life, and especially in the past few years. I would say that I'm a Christian, and I've kind of gotten back into it some. And what turned me off from Christianity for the longest time was that a lot of the people were like so fake about it and would only act the by the way of the Bible in big groups of people or at church, but then whenever it came down to how they would treat people they cared about and just people in general, they would treat them like shit. And it was not at all like, you're supposed to live like Christ did. It was not like that at all. It was quite the opposite. And it really turned me off from it for a minute. Not that that's super relevant to today's discussion, but that is a little side note. I'm getting kind of back into that a little bit. I saw her for a minute, left after the loser comment, and then I still had to have a therapist because I wanted to still kill myself. I'm sorry. That I should probably bleep that. But I still wanted to commit, and I was really, really, really fucking depressed and upset all the time. And I hated everything. I ended up seeing this um therapist who dealt mainly with kids and teenagers, which I was a teenager at the time, so that was totally fine. I ended up seeing her and I saw her for a few sessions, and I just remember being in the waiting room every time I was going to go see her, like thinking like I could just go leave and run out on the road and get hit by a car because she was talking to my mom at the time and I was in the other room just waiting for them to see me. And I was like, I could leave. I could end it all right now. Obviously, I didn't because I'm here talking to you again right now. Fast forward a couple sessions, right? She's really, really kind, very, very sweet, and I really liked her a lot. I would honestly see her again now, but there's a little bit of a story that you'll understand why I don't see her anymore. Um, let's say probably the third session of me seeing her, she could tell that I was kind of bullshitting my way through the sessions and that I was really, really not well and still very suicidal. And she brought it up to me one time. She's like, I want you to answer these questions for me as honestly as you can. And we went through all of these questions. And then she asked me, she's like, do you feel safe? Like, do you feel like you're going to harm yourself or whatever? And I was just like, oh my God. And I broke down just sobbing. I was telling her that no, I don't feel safe. And I think about hurting myself every single day that I wake up, and it's absolutely terrible and horribly painful. And just getting out of bed feels like the most mundane thing ever, and I hate it. And I don't know why the fuck I'm still doing this. And she talked to my mom, and then she had my mom take me back to the hospital again, in which they oh my god, it was such a weird experience. They put me in this, like, holding area, so I was in this locked room with no windows, just, like, basically completely dark in there, and a TV at the hospital, and there's just, like, this little bar of light, and I remember hearing other people in that unit, other, like, young adults, um, screaming and talking about how they were gonna hurt the nurses. It was fucking terrifying, but that's besides the point. That was just the holding area at the, main hospital until they could decide where they wanted to send me, and they talked to my mom about it because I could remember I could kinda hear this a little bit. They said they were going to send me to basically, like, a rehabilitation center for young adults that were struggling with addiction and also kids who had really, really hard lives and were either in between foster homes or just like very mentally unwell. So I said they were going to send me there, and I was like, what the fuck? I was like, why can't I just have the regular ass mental hospital again? Because I can bullshit my way through it, get out of there, and then do whatever the fuck I was going to do. And I am so grateful that I didn't go back to the regular mental hospital because that shit did nothing. But my mom ended up taking me to this kind of rehabilitation area. It was the biggest turning point for me in my mental health journey, or the first big turning point, because there was quite a few there. But the first big turning point, she took me there and I stayed there for probably like, I think I stayed there for maybe around the same time, maybe close to 2-ish weeks. I don't remember. I do remember that I spent Christmas there. My 2018 Christmas was spent at that rehabilitation slash mental hospital area. But I remember being there was so strange because it was like a very a very homey kind of thing. Like, we did a lot of therapy and stuff like that. We did a lot of group therapy, and we all talked with each other, and it felt so much more comfortable and less clinical. So we would have kind of our own rooms, but we had like actual beds instead of like the mental hospital cots. We had actual beds and actual blankets and things to kind of do, and they kept us occupied, but they let us sleep when we wanted to, which was really helpful because I was very depressed. It was such a wonderful experience, and most, if not, I think most, if not all of the people except for the nurses that worked there were people who had really, really hard times. Like, some of them I think had went to prison and had stuff related to drugs and addiction and had really, really hard lives, and had now taken the opportunity to help other people and to share with them what helped them. And I loved how real they were with us because they told us, they were like, this shit is difficult. You are going through something that is so, so hard. And unless you go through it, you probably wouldn't understand what it's like and how fucking hard it is to get out of it. And they were just such vulnerable, kind people. And they were not paid volunteers, as far as I know. Maybe they were paid a small cut, but they were just there to help other people. And they shared a lot of perspectives with me that really, really helped me grow and gave me basically the breath of life again, to where I felt like I am very depressed and I fucking hate everything, but I want to try. I want to try to get better. I want to try to live my own life. I know that I fucked myself over on that scholarship and that I'm never going to be able to do that. At this point, I was also so depressed I wasn't able to go to school, so I was homeschooled and in like early college. But I then, for them to let me go, they did talk to my mother and my father, and because this is the second time she's tried or like wanted to like commit, we can't let her go unless she is on some kind of medication. So they put me on an antidepressant, and then we also can't let her go unless she's in very intensive therapy. So at the beginning of 2019, I was released basically on New Year's. It was like a new year, new me. As goofy as that sounds, that's kind of how it went for me. They let me go and they put me on Lexapro, which I have bipolar disorder, as we all know. That medication or just antidepressants only target one portion of your brain, I want to say. I can't remember. There's unipolar and bipolar, so I think they only target one part of your brain, and if you have bipolar disorder, you need something that is targets both areas, rather than just one. That antidepressant worked for a very, very short period of time, and then it didn't work, and I upped it, and then I was a zombie, so that was a fucking whole issue on its own. I ended up going to therapy, doing intensive at-home therapy, which was 3 times a week. So I would go for 2 hours at a time. And during those 2 hours, we were able to break down a lot of boundaries and I was able to learn a lot about myself. I learned about the whole victim mindset, which is something I actually really want to make a podcast episode about. So I'll probably make one about that. But I learned that even though bad things had happened to me and maybe my circumstances and my environment weren't the best, I was not doing myself any good by just saying, I have no power and that I'm the victim here, so I should be treated as such. She really helped me see the fact that I had power over myself. Maybe not my situation and my circumstances, but she helped me see that I had power over myself and that I needed to let go of my victim mentality. And it was such a big breakthrough for me. I also learned a lot of healthy coping mechanisms. I got back into art some, which was really good. I wasn't doing hugs or anything at this point, so I had gotten out of that, and that was really wonderful as well. I started seeing my friends more during this time period too. This is probably from January to like April or June of 2019. And I was seeing my friends a lot and hanging out with them, and I just had this like breath of life back into me, and it was really wonderful. And then we decided that I didn't need intensive therapy anymore, which was fine. And I was really good for a few months after that. And I was working really hard in school or early college and completing all these classes, and it was wonderful. And it was a really, really bright time period for me because I hadn't been that bright in a long time. And then I moved on to just regular therapy for a while, like once a week, and was on a roller coaster of switching antidepressants pretty often. And then I settled on one that I still take a very low dose of, which is Pristique or desvenlafaxine. I think I'm saying that right. But I settled on that one. I've been on that one for a long time, and it helps me a little bit. I think it helps me more with my OCD though, which is really weird. Less about than the less for the depression. It just helps me remember that I'm a real person and that yeah, I don't know, it's a weird thing to say, but I got out of that really bad hit as far as my mental health goes, and then I was kind of just coasting for a while, but I would still oh my god. Let's fast forward a little bit, to when I was 17 and I got my license, right? I would be going through these really reckless time periods, so I would do really stupid shit that could get me in a lot of trouble legally. I would also this is one of my favorite things to do when I was more on the manic side, is I love to drive, like, over 100 miles per hour without my seatbelt on, and I was also at this point, I did start smoking. I'm sorry, guys. For the record, I don't smoke anymore. I don't have anything super negative to say for you guys. But if you do struggle with bipolar disorder like I do, it is not good for us. It's not good for our brains. And also, if you have people in your family that have schizophrenia or have some like schizoaffective symptoms in your family or bloodline, then that can also cause you some issues with smoking weed. So I don't do it anymore. I did it for a very, very long time. It was the only thing I was doing. I wasn't on the other like chemical hugs. One of my favorite things to do though was to smoke, and then I would go and drive, and I would drive without my seatbelt on, like hands out the window, and I'd be going over 100 miles per hour. And like, oh my God, I almost got in trouble so many times doing dumb shit like that. Or I was just being very risque about my behaviors as far as, other things go. I had a boyfriend, now ex-boyfriend at the time, who this is a really big part, I think, of my bipolar journey, and when I kind of realized that maybe I was bipolar, the only time I could stand him or stand to have sex with him was when I was in my manic phase, and it was the only time I could, like, stand to be around him and didn't think he was just annoying as fuck. And I'm really sorry if for some reason you're watching this. I have no like hard feelings, and I wish you the best. We just were not for each other whatsoever. But I realized kind of around that time whenever we were dating that I probably had bipolar disorder. It kind of came up into my mind because I would go through manic episodes and I would want to do all this crazy stuff, and I would want to go out and party and hang out with friends that I wasn't super close with who were into some bad shit, and I would want to have a lot of during those time periods. And just thought that I was fucking crazy because then a couple weeks later, I would be really depressed. I couldn't stand being around him. I didn't want him to text me. I didn't want him to call me. I wanted him to just leave me the fuck alone and move along. I did not want anything to do with this person when I was in my more depressive like episodes, and the only time I really could stand him was when I was manic. And I stayed in that relationship for so long because of the fact that I didn't understand my bipolar disorder. And I always thought that when I was depressed or feeling really, really shitty, that I was just taking it out on my partner and that it actually had nothing to do with him. When in reality, I never really liked him very much. I'm sorry again if you're watching this, but I never really liked him very much. And I only stayed because I thought there was something wrong with me. I would force myself to think about, well, you were so attracted to him 2 weeks ago. You were so attracted to him and you were so like obsessed with not really him, but the idea of having a boyfriend and having a partner and having someone to be intimate with that I wouldn't let him go, even though I knew that I did not want said person in my life anymore. And I knew that actually within the first 5 months of us even talking. This person also wanted to date me, and then I said I wasn't ready, and then whenever I wanted to date him, he was like, "Let's just not put a label on it." So then we didn't have a label for the first, like, 6 months of our relationship, and then we had one, and I dated him for, like, another 2 and a half-ish years, maybe 2 and a little bit of a change, till 2 and some change years, but, that was when I noticed that my bipolar disorder was pretty prevalent. I was like, okay, I think I have bipolar disorder, but I also didn't want to be like those people who self diagnose online because I hate that shit. Like the people who say, oh, I'm so manic. I just decided to do my makeup, even though it's 10 p.m. to take some cute pictures. And I'm just so manic. I'm so manic. I even sent someone like a selfie tonight, and like I only do that like every few days. And that's pretty out of character for me. I don't know. That shit just pisses me off because it's not fucking sweet, bitch. It's not sweet to feel like an absolute fucking psychopath all the time. Ugh. That sums up, I think, a lot of what my life was like from ages 17 to 19, I think. Right before I turned 19, so I'm 18 at this time, and my birthday was probably in like a month, I think, or so. I had saved up enough money so I could move out of my parents' house, which I was so excited about. And I was still dating said person at the time. And we went to go look at an apartment for me. He was not going to move in with me. No. And I knew this relationship was going to end very, very soon. I'd literally broken up with said person like 4 times before I finally ended it entirely over the course of like a couple years and some change. I fucking broke up with him so many times. Sorry, buddy. I don't even know if I'd call him buddy, but I don't. We no. No, 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 no. He was also older than me, so I don't fuck with that. I got the apartment and I remember telling him about it, and he was like, oh, I just feel like everybody's leaving me behind. He was 22, about to turn 23, so he was the same age that I am now, and he was living with his parents and bitching to me about everything all the time. And he just had no backbone. Again, if you're watching this, I'm so sorry, but if you're the same person you were then, you need to hear it. You need to fucking hear it. So I really hope that you've grown, and if you have, take this with a grain of salt. I'm talking about you then, not you now. But my point still stands. And he was just complaining to me about how he felt like everyone was leaving him behind. So I was just like, oh my God, I don't know if I can fucking deal with this. I ended up moving into the apartment and we hung out. He came over to stay the night one night, and we ended up being intimate that night. And I was so unhappy with my relationship with him and just so detached from him that I literally started bawling my eyes out. And I felt like after we had done that, that I felt the same as when I had been SA'd in the past. It was the exact same feelings washed over me, and that's when I knew. So then the next day, I broke up with him. I was like, "No, I can't do this anymore." I also want to talk a little bit more about how that relationship impacted my view of myself. While me and him were together, I completely lost who I was as a person. Towards the end of it, I felt like being so not true to myself and knowing that I didn't love this person and that we weren't meant for each other. I felt like I was lying to myself, and I completely lost my sense of self at this time. And I was absolutely fucking miserable. I broke up with him, and I had literally zero regrets. Zero regrets. I remember the night going to sleep after I broke up with him. I expected to go home and bawl my eyes out, but instead I just went to sleep, and my cat Pickles cuddled with me. He was the reason I was able to get through that breakup so smoothly because I didn't feel alone. I was like, oh my God, I have this fucking amazing cat, and he's so sweet, and he cuddles with me, and I love him to death. So I remember going to sleep that night and worried that I was going to bawl my eyes out all night. I didn't. And then from that moment, oh my God, girl, that's when the bipolar went fucking crazy. One thing about bipolar disorder is that big Life events or big changes in one's life can cause you to go into a manic episode or cause you to kind of switch, right? So that breakup and also that newfound freedom, I went off the fucking walls. Mom and dad, if you're watching this, I'm sorry. I was very promiscuous at the time. I had so much energy, so much energy. I was making art 24/7. I was talking to everybody. I was being super fucking creative and very promiscuous without any care for the consequences, which is a big portion of what mania is it's this crazy energy and these decisions that you make, and a lot of it's very reckless without any care for any of the consequences that could come as a result. I was just going through phases of being very promiscuous and just doing crazy shit all the time, being very reckless, a very similar thing. Driving without a seatbelt, diving back into some things that I shouldn't be doing, participating in activities I shouldn't have been participating in. And then I would drop down, hate myself, and even smoking wouldn't make me feel better because I was a very heavy smoker at the time. And then I would go right back up to being absolutely crazy and just like this manic pixie dream girl. I was really in my crazy ass hoe era. I'm sorry, guys. I'm sorry if you know me in my real life and you didn't want to know that about me, but that's the reality of what my bipolar journey has looked like up until that point. And then August rolls around and I'm still kind of doing this. And at this point, I got a psychiatrist because I was like, okay, this was when I was coming out of a manic episode, is actually whenever we had one of our sessions. And I was telling her about this stuff that I was doing. She was curious about how the past like couple weeks or month had been for me. So I start telling her all this stuff. And she pulls out her little notepad and she's like writing stuff down. And then she starts asking me very particular questions. She's like, "How long did this last? Like this period of mood?" And then these were the things that you did. Like, were you sleeping? And I was like, "Fuck no, I wasn't sleeping at all, unless sleeping." Never mind. I'm not gonna make that joke. And she asked me a bunch of very specific questions, which are the questions you get asked when they're trying to decide if you have bipolar disorder. She asked me all these questions, and then after we go over it, she's asked me more questions about basically the down period, right? Like when I drop, and I was like, "Yeah, no, that checks out. That checks. That checks. That checks." Literally everything checked off. All of them checked them the fuck off that list, and then we start discussing the fact that she thinks I have bipolar disorder, and I was like, "Girl, you're kidding. You're kidding. I fucking knew this shit for so long. I knew that I had bipolar disorder from the time I was like 15. I knew it. I knew it. It's also genetic." And I just figured, I was like, there's no way that all three of my parents' children, that none of us have fucking something. And I got all of them. I got all of them. My little sister got some of them too, lucky gal. So we get to hang out and talk about how bad our mental health is. Yes. If you're watching this, Ava, I love the fuck out of you. You know that. I love you so fucking much. You're my girl since day one. I'm getting off track. I'm getting off track. After she diagnosed me, she wanted to put me on medication, which I was totally down with because I was struggling heavily and everything in my life just felt like a fucking shit show and like I had no control over it whatsoever. She started me on a medication called Lamictal, which made me really, really angry. I had horrible road rage. I was breaking shit all the time. At one point, I remember I tight fist, like, or closed fist, sorry, punched the shit out of a metal filing cabinet, which was not my best moment. I was also punching trees and my knuckles were all bloody. So, as you can probably tell, I didn't stay on that medication for very long. And we ended up moving me to a mood stabilizer, which has helped a lot. I've been on that for the past 3.5 years, I would say. The medication that I'm on now just brings those highs and lows a lot closer together. So instead of going from here to here, I'm going from like here to here. I still experience a little bit of an up and down, but I do find that it is a lot more balanced. So that is my biggest tip for you. If you think you might have bipolar disorder, is to see a mental health professional. Please do that shit. it changed my fucking life. I also go to therapy still, which helps me to kind of rationalize my emotions by talking to someone. I can see everything laid out in front of me. I'm sorry I'm talking like this. I'm just fucking tired. And it helps me to kind of move forward with what I'm feeling and understand it fully. That brings us kind of to where we are now. I've been pretty stable since figuring out that I had bipolar disorder and also getting on medication. And it has been absolutely wonderful. I am a lot better about giving myself grace if I'm feeling like shit. And I think the fact that I just understand what's going on in my brain allows me to give it space and to let it be what it is, and also move forward with my life after getting that knowledge that I am bipolar, as if we all didn't know. All my friends used to joke with me. They're like, "Girl, you're bipolar as fuck." And I was like, "No, I'm not. You're crazy." They said I wasn't. And then I finally got diagnosed and it was pretty obvious. I also want to remind you that it is totally okay to feel your emotions. I think it's important for us to learn how to control them a little bit and still have healthy, fulfilling lives while having something like bipolar disorder. So I'm really grateful that I've been able to get up until this point, because I didn't want to be here for a very, very, very long period of time. So I'm so grateful for where I'm at now and all the people in my life. I love the fuck out of each and every one of you. You're amazing. My main tips for you as far as bipolar disorder go: if you are not sure if you have it, go see a mental health professional and get diagnosed, and also see a psychiatrist. I think actually a psychiatrist is the only person who can diagnose you, and get on medication for that shit. You might have to try a few different medications. I only had to try two, and the second one worked for me really well, so I was very, very grateful for that. My second tip for you is to hold space for yourself. I like to be very creative, and I push myself really hard in the gym, and I like to hang out with friends a lot when I'm in more of like an up period, and then whenever I'm in more of a low period, I tend to kind of direct my energy back inward, and I also prioritize a lot of self-care. I do prioritize rest a lot. I also feed into, or lean into, I guess you could say, my emotions. So if I am feeling pretty sad and down, I like to do something with it. I like to write poetry a lot, but if you can do something with it and use it as a form of expression, you will find that you don't hate that emotion quite as much. I also like to do a lot of art, so I will take the emotions I'm feeling, if they're more on the negative side, and I will use them to create something. Finding some kind of outlet or hobby that you can do when you're feeling very low in your emotional state is really, really helpful with dealing with bipolar disorder. Those are the main tips I have. I would also recommend to keep a pretty consistent diet and exercise routine. Like I was saying a second ago, I like to push myself a lot harder in the gym whenever I am in more of an up period. And then if I'm a little bit lower, I like to get on the Stairmaster or just go for a really long walk. And just make sure to take care of yourself even when you're in your low period. You could even do, I kind of do this. I have a set maintenance that I do just to keep myself okay. Even if I'm not fantastic, I know that I'll be okay. And that is taking care of myself, going to work, getting enough sleep, absolutely, and keeping a consistent exercise routine that does vary a little bit, and also eating a healthy diet. That way you don't feel like shit about yourself. You can learn a lot of coping mechanisms and coping skills from a licensed therapist. So I do heavily recommend that. I hope that getting a little bit of an insight of what my bipolar disorder journey has looked like for you guys, I hope that it helps you guys. And if you would like to share your experiences with me, you're welcome to leave them in the comments if you feel comfortable enough. But I also always list my socials in the description down below. So if you want to share your story with me, or want to share anything with me as far as your mental health journey or things that have helped you, I would love, love, love to hear that. I want you to know that I appreciate you so, so much, and I love you, and that you are worth it, and that things can get better. We just have to put in the work. I love you, and I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day. Bye.